Well, good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday, and I'm going to spend these few minutes checking in with you. We call it Coffee with PC. That's because I usually bring my cup of coffee. On Wednesdays, I save a third cup of coffee just to spend these few minutes with you, and I appreciate all of you who tune in and are part of this. In fact, I might even go so far as to say I'm awfully thankful for you, which is and has been the theme of what we've been talking about for the last few weeks. Maybe because it's November and Thanksgiving is next week, which is mind-blowing that we're already to Thanksgiving and pushing toward Christmas and the end of the year. But nonetheless, Thanksgiving is next Thursday, just a little over a week away. And I hope you're making your plans and you're looking forward to that day spent with friends and family and doing the things and eating the things, because that's usually a part of it for most of us, that you quite enjoy. And so in that vein, I've been encouraging us for the last couple of weeks to be people that aren't just thankful one day a year because the calendar says so, but people, particularly as people of God, as people of faith, as followers of Jesus Christ, that thankfulness should mark our lives all year long. And so we've talked about that for a few weeks, and I want to pick up on that theme again today by looking at an interesting encounter Jesus had with a group of people. It's in Luke chapter 17. If you want to look it up, read it later. It's Luke chapter 17, verses 11 through 19. If your Bible, like most modern ones do, have it broken into paragraphs or sections or stories, this one has the heading in the NIV, Jesus heals 10 men with leprosy. So maybe that's a story you're familiar with. In case you're not, let me just kind of bring you up to speed. Basically, you kind of got to the end of it. Jesus heals 10 lepers. Now, in that day, leprosy, this kind of a skin disease, was treated very seriously. And if you had that kind of a skin disease, leprosy, you were considered unclean and an outcast from the people, your family, the city, wherever you lived. In fact, you had to live outside the city. There would be these groups of lepers that would gather outside the city limits, not in the normal goings and comings of family and friends, but outside of it, because that was one way that the people in the city thought they could prevent it spreading. And one of the things they had to do even, and this is really interesting, is if somebody was coming near, the lepers were supposed to call out, unclean, unclean, so that people would know they were there and know they had this skin condition and could avoid them at all costs. So having leprosy in Jesus' day was a pretty big deal, and it made you an outcast in every way imaginable. And certainly one of the biggest ways was it cut you off from not just family and friends, but from communal religion, from your synagogue or your temple. You couldn't go and make the sacrifices and be a part of the religious life of your people, the Jews, and your family. So it was a huge deal to be diagnosed, to have leprosy, and to be an outcast. And here we see Jesus as he's approaching a village on the edge of Samaria. It tells us he sees these 10 lepers, and they're all calling out to him, Jesus, Master, have pity on us. So for whatever reason, even though they're outcasts, these lepers know who Jesus is and think that he can do something about their condition. And so they call out to him, like many people did with many different conditions in the stories of his life, the ministry of Jesus in the Gospels as it's recorded. And so that's what's happening here. And it says Jesus saw them and heard them, and he says to them, go show yourself to the priest. That's an interesting thing for Jesus to say. Notice he doesn't say, you are healed. We see him say that, take up your mat and walk, or whatever the case may be. The blind are restored to sight, and it's an immediate healing. This he doesn't say to them. He says, go and show yourself to the priest. Now, part of that's practical, because in that day, the priests were the ones who would declare you unclean with leprosy, or if you were over it, they would declare you clean and allow you back into the life of your people, of your family, of the community. So they were in that way kind of literally the gatekeepers for the lepers. So Jesus is doing something very practical. He's saying if you go and present yourself to the priest, you need to do that. That step has to be taken before you'll be accepted back into the society. And it says, as they went, which is an interesting thing, they were cleansed. And so I have all sorts of questions. Maybe you do too. So Jesus says this to them. How did the cleansing happen? How were they healed? Jesus doesn't say you're healed. He says, go show yourself to the priest. And as they're going, they're healed. I don't know if it happened all at once, like immediately as soon as they heard him say it and obeyed what he said and turned and went into town to the priest, whoosh, it was gone, or whether it slowly cleared up. Maybe as they were walking, they were talking, and one noticed the particular symptoms, the signs on the skin of leprosy were not there for his friend, and then he looked at himself. But whatever happens along the way, in response to their faith to do what Jesus tells them to go show themselves to the priest, they're cleansed. The leprosy is gone. And here's the interesting part of the story, particularly as we talk about Thanksgiving. One of them, when he saw he was healed, so however that process happened, when he realized he had been healed, came back praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet, and guess what he did? He thanked him. What a concept, that this man who had been suffering from leprosy and an outcast from his people, having been healed, of those 10 people, all of them healed, only one of the 10 came back and thanked Jesus for that healing. That's remarkable. Only 1 out of 10. Now I would say, and here's something I read about this that I thought was pretty interesting, and it was looking at the difference between being thankful and giving thanks, that probably all 10, when they saw they were cleansed, were thankful. They were praising God. That, as they went, they were cleansed. They probably were excited. Look at this, I can't believe it. Let's go, let's hurry. But only one of them gave thanks. So there's a difference between being thankful and the actual act of giving thanks, of expressing thanks. And only one of these 10 did that particular thing. I think that's an interesting idea there. And it reminds me of something that we and the Baptist practice of Christian faith don't really have. And that's sort of a rhythm to our religious expression. If you come out of some of the other expressions of Christianity, maybe the more liturgical, and I've never been in those particular churches other than to visit a few services. I grew up in a Baptist church, so I'm used to kind of the Baptist way of doing it, but many churches have regular routines of services and prayers every day. Sometimes they're called the daily offices, primarily morning and evening. And this comes out of really the Jewish practice, where they would have times where they would set aside during the day to offer certain sacrifices or offer certain religious worship. In fact, we see that even in the New Testament when Peter and John are going to the temple at the third hour or whatever. We have these markers. There are times during the day in the Jewish life that were rhythms when the people would stop what they're doing and focus on God in prayer, in worship in some way. And even in certain Christian expressions, that's it. And if you're out of that, maybe that was helpful to you. In fact, the psalmist, Psalm 119, says, 7 times a day I praise you. Now, I don't know if they had 7 specific times. I tried to look up the particulars. Couldn't really find them in the few minutes I tried to do that. But the idea is it was a regular, and it was anticipated, and it was a process of setting aside several times during the day to focus on God. Maybe 7 times a day seems like a lot. How about Psalm 92 verses 1 and 2, where it says, I proclaim your love in the mornings and your faithfulness at night. How about 2 times a day, in the morning and in the evening? That idea. I like that sort of thing, that there can be rhythm to our life, and we can, in the rhythm of that, it can have one of 2 effects. One effect, and maybe the reason a lot of people don't do that, is because it just feels like you're going through the motions. Oh, it's this time, I need to do this, and go through the religious ritual and motion. And I don't think that's the intent that I'm communicating, nor the intent the offices and some of these other things were installed. They were rather done as a way to consistently build into people the habit of prioritizing a focus on God, even in the midst of your everyday, ordinary, busy life. And so I kind of like that idea as I think about it sometimes, that sort of rhythm that comes with life. And so maybe I can encourage you this way. I don't know about you, but I live off reminders on my phone. Whether it's on my calendar, whether it's in the reminder app, whether it's an alarm in my clock, that goes off at a certain time. All of those things happen. I have several every day that are going to go off because there's something I need to do. Usually, I set it today for something tomorrow or 3 days from now. Some I just reset week after week after week because I have certain things I don't want to forget to do. And there's a lot of times that's the way I do it. Maybe we used to have to-do lists. I don't use those anymore. I usually set a reminder in my phone so my phone goes off and tells me, hey, this is what's happening. So maybe I would encourage you, and I've not done this, but maybe it's worth doing. Maybe set a reminder or two. You could do 1 or 2 a day and just have something simple that says, thank God. Express thanks for God, not just be thankful. Because if I were to ask most of you, say, of course I'm thankful, and you would begin to maybe think of all the things you're thankful for, from the things that are well, we sometimes take for granted but shouldn't, like life and health and family and love and relationship and God and salvation, to particular things that happen that you're thankful for. But I would encourage you, maybe use something like that. Maybe it's a reminder app. Maybe it's a calendar entry on your phone, or however you do it, to say, I'm gonna build rhythm into my life. I'm gonna build habit into my life to purposefully, intentionally be thankful. That I'm going to once or twice or 3 times a day, however it is for you, to stop. That reminder's going to go off, and I'm going to thank God. Maybe like the psalmist says, to proclaim his love in the morning and thank him for his faithfulness at night. If you just hit those 2 things, God's love for us as soon as you get up and his faithfulness before you go to bed, well, that would be a good thing. I keep hitting my watch. I don't know if you can hear the noises it's making. I apologize for that, but nonetheless, that's my encouragement to you today. I hope you're going to have a great Wednesday, a great rest of your week. We have service, as you would expect, this Sunday coming up, 9 a.m. we meet. Love to have you join us in person, online, whatever is available for you. If you're in our community, we'd love to have you here. If you don't live in Key Largo, you live in another community, hey, find a church that you can become a part of. And like the communal aspect that we see in the New Testament, like these lepers were together and sharing sometimes their struggles and rejoicing a little bit at their healing, or the communal aspect really that was the early church, where they kind of moved and did things together, relying on each other. That's an important reminder. We need other believers in that community of faith we call the church. So try to plug in person if you can, whether it's here or whether it's somewhere else, but do that. Thanks again for spending these few minutes with me. I hope you'll take the time to intentionally and purposely build thankfulness, gratitude as a habit in your life. That's my encouragement for you today. Take care, everybody.